In this video, I'll talk about isotope. So if you look at any atom, the atom has a nucleus, nucleus, and the nucleus contains, if you look at, let me draw here, if you look at any atom, it does have a nucleus, and what is inside the nucleus? Protons and neutrons. I'm simply writing P and N, and then outside the electrons are orbiting. This is just a simple representation. So what are the isotopes now? So isotopes simply means two or more types of atoms. It could be three or more, even more, that have exactly the same atomic number, and but differ the number of neutrons. It has exactly the same number of neutrons, same number of protons, but the different number of neutrons. So simply write it down. The number of protons is same and number of neutrons is different. That would call as an isotope. So if proton is same, what does this mean? If the proton is same, that means if you look at the periodic table, all the isotopes will be exactly at the same location. It will have exactly the same position in the periodic table, because the periodic table is determined by the number of protons. So all the isotopes will have exactly the same position in the periodic table. So the simple thing is the atomic mass number, that is the number of protons, will be the same, but it will have the different number of neutrons for an isotope. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more about it. If you look at any chemical reaction or chemical behavior, the neutrons is inside the nucleus, so it does not participate into the chemical reaction. The chemical reaction is solely determined by the orbiting electrons, because the electrons orbit outside. The electrons orbit outside, and the protons and neutrons are inside. The neutrons do not participate in chemical reaction. That means the chemical behavior is entirely determined by the orbiting electrons. So what does this mean again? This means as all the isotopes have exactly the same number of electrons, they will have exactly the same chemical behavior, the same chemical properties. So what does the number of neutrons tell you, or how does the isotope different? Yes, you know that the number of neutrons is different for each isotope. So that means the nuclear behavior, that means the nuclear properties will be different for each isotope. So let me write down here. Isotope, same chemical behavior, and different nuclear behavior. Okay. Why same chemical behavior? Because it does have exactly the same number of protons or same number of electrons. And why different nuclear behaviors? Because nuclear behavior is determined by the neutrons, and each isotope have the different number of neutrons, so the nuclear behavior will be different. So an example of isotopes, so for example carbon here, if you look at the carbon, each carbon here has exactly the same number of protons, number 666, but 12, 13 and 14 represents the mass number, or the number of protons and number of neutrons together, and each has different number of neutrons. For example, this one has 6 neutrons, this one has 7 neutrons, and this one has 8 neutrons. How do we know that this one has 8 neutrons? 14 minus 6 will be 8. So that means it has 8 neutrons. 13 minus 6 is 7. That means it has 7 number of neutrons. 12 minus 6 will be 6. So it has 6 number of neutrons. Another example here, nitrogen. So if I look at the nitrogen, for example, this isotope has 7 protons, and the number of neutrons will be 14 minus 7, that is 7, and the number of electrons is exactly the same as the number of protons, so it will be the 7. For this case, the number of protons has 7, the number of neutrons will be 15 minus 7, that is 8, and the number of electrons will be exactly the same as the number of protons, which is 7. For this case, the number of protons is still the 7, that means the number of protons. The number of neutrons means 16 minus 7, that is 9, and the number of electrons will be 7. So why you call this one as an isotope? Because these are called the isotopes because it does have exactly the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. So these are called the isotopes. Same number of protons but different number of neutrons. Okay. So this is it from this video. If you have any questions, write down in the comment section below, and do not forget to like, share and subscribe the channel. Thank you very much.